All right, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. On this channel, we have been going through some of the things about the O.J. Simpson case, and we did a series of uploads some of the kind of just discussion points about the case, trying to examine some of the loose ends and was there anything that had been overlooked, as well as just exploring some of the challenges that people made about the kind of O.J. Simpson case in general. Now, what does that really mean? Well, the first thing that I would say before we get into this is tomorrow we'll get on to some new subjects that we've never covered before on this channel, and I think this will be the final OJ upload for a while, because we can't really just keep getting bogged down on this case. However, I admit this is one particular instance where it is hard to just completely walk away. No matter which way you examine the OJ case, you always have something that just wants to pull you back in, and it gets you to keep talking and talking and talking about it. What I would say though, really, in this upload is that I had been listening to some of those videos online from the YouTube channel Lionel Nation, which is hosted by some guy who used to work with Johnny Cochran, and he says flat out, O.J. Simpson was guilty. There was only one perpetrator. O.J. had no accomplices, and he breaks it down in the sense that why is Nicole Brown Simpson's blood found in his Bronco? Because he killed her. They said there should be more blood. No, you don't have Nicole Brown Simpson's blood in your car because you didn't kill her. The blood is there because O.J. Simpson killed her, and O.J. acted alone. That's kind of the kind of mainstream narrative that is put forward not only by Lionel Nation, but also by the prosecution back in 1994, 95, and all that. That's kind of the mainstream narrative that is presented. O.J. Simpson committed the murders of both Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. No help, no assistance, no accomplices. What I would sort of say is that we've kind of examined some things where it's like it could be very likely that OJ did indeed have an accomplice, and we did a whole upload on that where it's just like this could range from something as anything from a getaway driver to someone who was helping actually fight off Ron Goldman. I put forward the theory that this could very well be the case of someone was in a physical fist fight with Ron Goldman. And when OJ even talks about this in the book, if I did it naming him as Charlie, that's how Ron Goldman's hands were so beaten up like he had been punching a person. And then O.J. Simpson came over with a knife, pulled Ron Goldman over, and then finished him off, and all of that. Like, that would have produced much less physical evidence than I think a lot of people are taking into account. But there's a big thing that I would like to say. And this is kind of more of a commentary point rather than a theory, where it's like the prosecution did not do a very good job, and the investigators overlooked critical things. This is the big statement, though. Even if, even if O.J. Simpson had been found guilty, they read the verdict, Orenthal James Simpson, we find you guilty of murder in the first degree. Even if they had done that, O.J. would have won the appeal. Why do I say that? Because of all the suspicious nature around the blood evidence. And I do have to admit there is some suspicious nature. A lot of people really insist that, there's the vial of blood that was kind of, I hope I get this right, 2 cc's less than it should have been. And they think that OJ's blood could have been taken, mixed in with Ron Goldman's and Nicole Brown Simpson's blood and planted in the Bronco. That's an alternative theory, mind you. I'm just kind of putting it out there. Remember, this is just kind of like stating some stuff that people have said in the past. Like someone left an interesting comment on one of the uploads when they said that there was a mixture found on the white Bronco of Ron's blood, Nicole Simpson's blood, and O.J. Simpson's blood. It's like the only way that could have happened is if he had killed her. If he had killed them. That's the only way that could have happened. But that's exactly the stuff that Lionel Nation talks about. The only way that Nicole's blood could have gotten into the Bronco is if he killed her. And it's like the entire alternative theories are just all based on the fact that that stuff was planted and faked and fabricated. And there's even the what's the name? Even who's on on YouTube talking about this, where he talks about how Mark Furman met O.J. Simpson once in the 1980s during a domestic dispute between him and Nicole Brown Simpson, and he actually stayed in contact with Nicole Brown for a variety of years. He made comments about her to his colleagues. He knew who she was, and they come up with those theories like that. But the fact of the matter is, I would propose. I mean, like, I'm not going to propose that any of those theories are legitimate, or I'm not going to propose that OJ was 100% guilty right now. The thing that is kind of that I've dealt with for years is that if OJ had been found guilty, he would have won the appeal because of the suspicious nature around the blood evidence. They would have been like, okay, evidence tampering. Not to mention, I mean, kind of Mark Furman definitely weighed down the situation with all of his frivolous showboating nonsense. So the whole point is, though, it's like, and we're going to explore this in a few other cases that we're about to do on this channel. It's something that was laid out very clearly on television once, when the guy's just saying, you have the right to a fair trial in America, right? And if they even have the smallest instance of evidence tampering, or the jury hears something that was incorrect, that person can be acquitted. That person can win the appeal. Because that means that the jury was hearing something that wasn't true and that that person didn't get the right to a fair trial. There's another thing that surrounds this issue with the blood evidence in the O.J. Simpson case. I've seen so many debates going on about the four letters EDTA, this blood preservative that is only found in laboratories, right? That's how they often introduce it when you're listening to some of the, any of the source material on O.J. Simpson. They're like, blood was found that contained the EDTA preservative. And that's something that can only be found in laboratories. But then, later on, in other OJ stuff, they say that no, this is produced naturally in the body. Well, what on earth is going on? How can you have something that is only found in laboratories that isn't natural to blood, and that something is both naturally produced in the body? Which one is it? And I'm not a scientist, but when I listen to these debates, you kind of listen to what people are saying. Is what it sounds like they're trying to say is that this is something that can be produced in the body naturally, and like because of diet. I mean, like if you're just like eating certain things, you would have EDTA in your blood, but the levels would be so much higher in a lab. Like, I mean, like you're not going to have the same sort of levels. It would be very obvious to any sort of person working with blood who is trained. I don't know what you would call them, a phlebotomist, a hematologist, anyone working with blood, that this blood, came from a laboratory and they had put the blood preservative in it. They can tell the difference, in short. So the fact of the matter is, I mean, the scientists would have a very, very clear understanding of that, even if us in the general public don't seem to have the best understanding. I don't think that that is something that would be kind of a gray area issue for scientists. But when we actually want to explore the concept of O.J. Simpson murdering Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, I mean, the alternative theories out there for this one are vast and endless. The drug connections at La Mezzaluna, I mean, the suspicious activity surrounding people who have also passed away that were associates of Ron Goldman. There's that Colombian necktie stuff. Also, they mentioned that Fred Goldman's wife was the ex-wife of a drug lord, and it's just like lots of problematic activity going on all at once. And that's only on the Goldman side. That's only stuff that's around Ron Goldman. We also have Faye Resnick, the friend of Nicole Brown Simpson, that O.J. Simpson really tried to implicate in all of this. Many times in like interviews when he tries to plead for his innocence, he says, you got to look at Faye Resnick and her drug connections. And okay, I mean, I guess there's this thing about rich people in Los Angeles. They do cocaine or something like that. Am I crazy in saying like that? All right, they do cocaine. I mean, boom. Are you surprised hearing that? And they buy cocaine from drug dealers, and those drug dealers have other drug connections. I mean, that's not the craziest thing in the world. Yes, I do believe that there are drug connections at places around Los Angeles, as well as, that very well could be all the stuff about La Mezzaluna could be true. But does that mean that these two very specific people, Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, were murdered by O.J. Simpson? Well, I mean, we'll kind of get to it in the end. What we can kind of say is that the prosecution did a really lousy job in this. And you sort of just see so many times, like, when I'm going through the interviews, the documentaries, and you're just like, what on earth was Marsha Clark thinking? And that one of the big things we mentioned was there's that individual named Jill Shively. Remember, I always forget her name. She was the woman who sold her story to hard copy for $5,000, saying that she saw OJ in the white Bronco. You know, I'm not sure if it was exactly on Bundy, but in the sort of vicinity of where Nicole Brown Simpson was. And then Marsha Clark is like, we don't want to use her. She sold her story to hard copy for $5,000. She's no longer credible. She's blown the investigation. She's blown the case. I think that Marsha Clark actually told that woman, Jill, that she blew the case for them. I mean, like, she blew the trial. And somebody else, I think it might have been on Lionel Nation, but maybe it was on a different show when someone was just like, "No, the woman sold her story for $5,000 because she was telling the truth. I mean, she wasn't selling something that wasn't real. I mean, if you're going to sell your story and put yourself on national television, I mean, there's a very high chance that that could be the truth." And that's a total matter of perspective. Let's not pretend that people don't fabricate that stuff. But we also have someone seeing two people in a white Bronco, and a lot of people suggest the second person could have been Jason Simpson. And, it could have been kind of what I genuinely believe that it was, if that indeed is true, that it was, someone whom we don't really know on the national scene. OJ calls him Charlie in the book. I think it's an accomplice that perhaps has been unidentified, and I would just say that the reason why I sort of was pushing that theory was I think a lot of the physical evidence associated with Ron Goldman suggests that there could have been multiple perpetrators involved. I'm not 100% convinced, but we even discussed this in the comments section a little bit when we were saying OJ didn't normally act alone at these things. I mean, even look at his like thing in Las Vegas when he got busted. He always has people around him. He has AC around him all the time. He has Robert Kardashian around him all the time, and perhaps Jason Simpson is around him when they're going out. Like the only time though, like I would say that perhaps on that 911 call when you hear OJ in the background freaking out. I mean, that might have been a time when he would have acted alone. And that's another thing that we've talked about though is like we talked about three sort of possibilities about why OJ would have gone to Nicole's house to kind of trigger the incident. Some people think that he went there to slash her tires and that's why he was holding the knife and that she caught him and interrupted that, but what would have kicked that off? What would have started that? It would have been something like, I don't necessarily he was going to slash her tires. I mean, that's kind of mind reading at this point. I mean, who on earth said that he was going to slash her tires? That's kind of just surmise. But the things that could have tipped this off were what OJ wrote what someone else named Pablo wrote in the book, If I Did It, that Charlie came over to him and says, "Hey, something's going down at Nicole Brown's house. We gotta go." Or I guess Nicole's house, as he would have just referred to her as. And then they go over there. That's the biggest thing that stood out to me, though, in that entire Judith Regan interview, when I was like, nothing was going on at Nicole's house. Nicole wasn't even home at that point. She was at La Mezzaluna, right? She left her glasses there. Ron Goldman was trying to return her glasses to them. So some people, I mean, like, not really some people, I mean, I guess it would really just kind of be my own kind of hunch is that OJ was making something up to cover for somebody. This could be that Jason Simpson had a dispute where Nicole didn't show up to his restaurant with 10 friends like she was supposed to. And, Jason was a chef. They're going to come over. They're going to try his food, see where he worked. And, they had the preserve table and she didn't show up. And then Jason calls OJ and tells him what happened. And he's like, all right, I'm going to have some words with Nicole. And then that's a possibility. And that's a little bit more than just mind reading because we know that Jason had the dispute. Also, another suggestion that someone brought up was Nicole was indeed at La Mezzaluna, and they were with friends or something, and they specifically did not invite OJ. And Nicole might have even said something like, "We don't want you to come." Someone could have said something like that. I mean, I'm getting a little hazy on those details, but that could have been a direct involvement where OJ was told not to come to La Mezzaluna, so then he goes to Nicole's house to confront her. Once again, slashing the tires is kind of, that's a little bit too speculative, even for a channel like this, where we get very speculative. We are all about, theories and speculation and ideas, but that's kind of mind reading at this point. I mean, do you have some type of, I don't know, email or something where we're dealing with a 1994, a handwritten note? Hey, BRB, I'm going out to slash Nicole Brown Simpson's tires. See you in 10. I mean, that's kind of being too specific and sort of micromanaging the case to get a desired result. But a big thing that we could kind of examine is, what is the final verdict? I mean, I kind of told you the thing that I thought was, where it's like, whether or not OJ did it or whether one of these alternative theories is true, he most likely would have won the appeal because of so many errors in the prosecution and the investigation. And if there's even the smallest amount of evidence tampering, which it seems like at least some evidence tampering happened, then he had a high chance of winning the appeal, very very likely. And that's just an if moment, but that means that he probably wouldn't have served that much jail time for this if he had indeed been found guilty. That's kind of just a hypothetical scenario at this point, but OJ loves hypothetical scenarios, and I hope OJ Simpson will listen to this one day and think, that dude from Black Box Radio really got it right. No, no, that's probably some dark humor that I shouldn't have thrown in. But when we want to look at sort of this case, it's really something that kind of pulls you in, partially because of the personalities. Not only O.J. Simpson, but also this was one that really had, people like kind of infatuated with the lawyers. It's not just Marsha Clark and Johnny Cochran, but F. Lee Bailey and Robert Shapiro and Barry Sheck, and they become almost like characters in a television show, and people just want to listen to it more and more. But another thing that we would need to say is, I've told you kind of my biggest feeling that even if OJ had been convicted of this murder, he would have likely won the appeal based on, their kind of presentations about evidence tampering. But if what any of these theories are that we've put forward, there's an accomplice out there that did not get convicted, and that means that someone, an accessory to murder, would have gotten away, would have gotten away with it. They would have gotten off scot free. And that is something that is quite dangerous. And there could be multiple accomplices. I mean, a lot of people think that it was Robert Kardashian that destroyed some evidence of that. That's what the whole garnet bag thing is. I mean, it's something theoretical, and I think Robert Kardashian has taken that to the grave with him. We won't really know everything, and that's the whole reason Kardashian was brought on to the legal team, because they didn't want him to testify. All right, I mean, like, he could have been involved with this in some way, but the biggest thing is, I mean, we just have to sort of look at the final verdict. Even if OJ had been found guilty, he would have likely won the appeal based on this shoddy investigation work that probably infringed upon something here and there, and then they'd just be like, oh, he did not get a fair trial, therefore he must be acquitted or something like that, or the appeal must be granted. Got to get my terminology right. I'll get it there one day. And that would also mean that there could be an accomplice that has gotten away with this. Not sure how involved was. I'd say that there's very little physical evidence, but the biggest thing that I tried to share, the single greatest message that I would try to share about some accomplice being involved in the altercation is, if there had been something like a fist fight with Ron Goldman, there really might not be that much physical evidence left behind. That was the biggest thing that I wanted to kind of share with these OJ uploads. I mean, Ron Goldman wouldn't have been stabbed at that point, so there wouldn't be that much blood evidence. Remember, OJ's footprint was only found there because he stepped in blood. If someone's fighting Ron Goldman before he got stabbed, there really isn't. He wouldn't have stepped in anyone's blood or something. No Bruno Mali footprints left from anybody else. The Bruno Mali footprint was found in blood. not in the dirt. To, at least as the famous one that they show up there. I mean, if they have something else that wasn't released to the public, always possible, but to the best of our knowledge now. Well, this is the last OJ upload we're going to do for a while. Just kind of wanted to say some things about this, that kind of what I said about the appeal process. He would have most likely been granted. The prosecution didn't do the best job, and there could be an accomplice still out there. Well, if you have anything to say at all about the case, and people leave excellent comments about OJ, the people who are kind of believers in the alternate theories, they put out some very well articulated stuff. And the people who believe that OJ is guilty also give excellent things. I would really have to say that with this particular case, people are putting out very articulate comments on the uploads that I have done, whether it's the Jason Simpson murder theory or the alternate theories that we've discussed. So thank you so much, and until next time.